Still mulling over stats as I arrived at Gdynia ferryport, not quite believing it all, I took a different approach and looked at the deaths from flu in Europe as a whole. Well, the average is over 200,000, around about as much as the coronavirus death stats for the whole of the world. But maybe I was leaving out other flus or similar winter ailments, and there was a serious spike from the coronavirus itself. So I looked at deaths in the UK as a whole each year. Well, in the first 3 months of this year, 185,000 people had died, whether from car accidents, cancer or flu. But I was disappointed to find that the same figure from 2018 was 187,000. There may well be a spike over the next couple of weeks, but really so much as to justify stopping an economy and stopping life itself? What would be enough? Double? Triple?
Feels like kind of I don't know, a stairway to heaven. Stepping stones to paradise. 8155.
It will be one deck up.
One deck up.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you open at all for drink and food and coffee?
On deck 9, all restaurants open.
Oh right, okay, great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good to hear. So you've relaxed the rules then, because when I phoned it was quite strict.
We have only 2 restaurants, Taste Restaurant and Food City.
But you can sit as normal, you don't have to stay in your cabin.
Only 50 passengers can eat
50.
in one restaurant.
Okay,
Yeah.
right, fine. And here's the main question, do you allow smoking on this ship?
Only outside.
On deck 10.
But can I go outside?
Yes.
Fantastic, thank you very much. It just feels a little bit like I can breathe again. It's funny, you don't really realise you're in a sort of a state of kind of internal tension and pressure until it's actually released. I just feel a little bit of release just stepping onto the ferry and meeting the reception staff and so on and so forth, and seeing a few people walking around without the old face masks on, which is kind of, I don't know, just slightly interesting, isn't it? That you don't realise kind of the underlying kind of quiet, kind of gentle current of fear.
Vid en nödsituation hörs en alarmsignal med 7 korta och en lång signal.
In an emergency, the alarm with 7 short and 1 long blast will be heard.
Well, I have to say, over the past week, ever since I made this decision, I, have had doubts and reservations. Isn't the best thing to do during the course of a global pandemic to lock yourself at home and just weather the storm. But you know what it is, when you have a kind of a strong impulse that kind of comes from there, you wake up in the middle of the night and you think, I've got this idea. And what happens very quickly thereafter is, a day or two goes by and you think, that's not such a clever thing to do, that's a bit foolhardy. Well, let's go and have a little look around the ship. Just leaving port. Oh, there's a little bit of a party going on there. Well, there certainly seems to be a little bit of a party spirit in this corridor at least. So, let's have a little look. Place where I've just been to take a video of the ship departing port is apparently the sun deck, which in the current situation is a little bit ironic. A little bit of a misrepresentation of what a sun deck is, because there was no sun and there was a little bit of deck. Don't think he is wearing a mask. He's definitely not wearing a mask, so you can't see the straps around the back of his head. pretty dangerous down there too. I mean, gust of wind could carry out a coronavirus molecule to the seagulls, and they could transmit it to, I don't know, a food market in Wuhan. Before you know it, you got a seagull flu as well as a bat flu, coronavirus flu. Yep, that's an accident waiting to happen. That is. He should be promptly arrested and banged up. Oh my God, there's somebody at the bar there ordering a drink. Don't see a great deal of attention to the rules. I don't know what the policy is in between territorial waters, assuming that the country that we're going to has a lockdown as well. What's the state of play legally speaking? Is there a point halfway between the two countries out in the middle of the ocean that the laws don't apply at all? Perhaps that's the safest place to be. Well, safest place to be if you're a little bit of a renegade like myself. There's a slightly unusual situation here. You order your drinks that side of that plate of glass, you probably just see it. But then when he serves you your drinks, you come round to where I'm standing and he gives you your drinks there, so he's in close proximity with no glass.
Do portu w Skronie dopłyniemy o godzinie 7:30 rano zgodnie z kodem rejsu. W czasie podróży spodziewam się dobrej pogody z wiatrem wiejącym z kierunków północno-zachodnich, wiejących z prędkością około 5 metrów na sekundę.
Well, hi folks, sorry for the slightly wobbly camera, but we're just approaching port. It's about 6:30 a.m. on Sunday the 19th of April. Now, there's an interesting event. In fact, there's been a number of interesting events in the course of this crisis that I want to talk to you about in relation to this 1%, just to try to get to the bottom of where this 1% came about. And this is just a little bit of speculation, but I did start to speculate in this way because I stumbled on the story of the Diamond Princess, the cruise ship, the Diamond Princess. Now, this whole pandemic has had some sort of rather interesting features. It's like a kind of a story. It's like a movie, perhaps arguably a little bit of a bad sort of apocalypse Hollywood kind of B-roll movie, but it's had these interesting events, and obviously the first one was a very filthy marketplace in China propagating a virus. There was talk of bats, and then that went on to a Chinese doctor who was, lifting the lid on this secret virus that apparently the authorities weren't reporting, let alone taking steps to address. You then have the same character actually die of this virus, having been persecuted by the authorities in China, a police state. In many ways, you couldn't make it up. And then you had a situation, as I say, on this cruise ship. What's interesting about this cruise ship is they've got a veritable petri dish, or putri dish. I think it's a petri dish actually. I was never very particularly good at biology at school. And you've got 3,700 people, basically like sardines in a tin, on the ocean waves over a period of weeks. It wasn't just a couple of days. And you've got a population of elderly people, 20% of whom contracted the virus, and 1% of that 20% died. I think it's about 10 or 12 people now. It was about 10 at the time that I was looking into this in early March. Now that gives you the 1% mortality rate of deaths against those who were infected. So you can see why the medical professionals, the government advisors, might have painted this worst case scenario picture of 1% of anybody contracts this virus dies. I might just add that I referenced earlier that perhaps when Dr. Anthony Fauci made this pronouncement about it being 10 times more lethal, without knowing about the whole iceberg under the water of people who had actually got it but not had any symptoms, or only very mild ones. The thing about the Diamond Princess is, I guess it's not. It is
it's as good a laboratory test as you could have. I mean, 3,700. I know it's not, 3 million, but it's still not a bad sample. I think if you were going to construct a laboratory test, you could do worse. But of course, it was a population of elderly people. I think, the average age was 60 plus. I think I've been conservative there. I think it was actually even higher. You've got a cruise ship. I mean, I'd love to look at the paperwork for these cruise ships to see just on average how many people die during a cruise. I suspect there are a lot of people during their sunset years who go on cruise ships, a lot of people with underlying medical conditions. So it really does seem like something of a worst case scenario. Don't forget, of course, which is something that I've stumbled on as I've looked into it, and it was another thing that kind of surprised me really, that I discovered that actually the way that they were identifying the coronavirus deaths was simply by saying that if they had the coronavirus at point of death, then it was a coronavirus death. Not that they didn't test for whether the coronavirus had caused death, simply that it was present at the time that death occurred. Now we know from the scientific advisor to the Italian health minister, who has been quoted, that in many cases, not just such individuals, these elderly individuals, didn't just have one underlying medical condition at time of death. They often had two, and many had three underlying medical conditions. So, at any rate, it seems to me a coincidence of percentages, let's call it, and I'm just letting my conspiracy theorist viewpoint run a little bit of a mini riot here, because you can't help but think, since this happened at quite an early point in time, that it might have somehow influenced the scientists. Certainly they could reference that as at least a concrete source of their claims that this was a deadly virus 10 times more serious than the average flu. Anyway, so what? WHO, this American doctor, others have wildly exaggerated the lethality of this virus. Just because they're making public pronouncements doesn't actually necessarily mean that it isn't lethal. Because, I mean, after all, the data's not there yet. And as I started to talk to friends about this, really just to check whether or not I was barking up the wrong tree, people directed my attention towards the charts. And yeah, take a look at this chart and take a look at this chart. It does seem a little bit frightening. And you're talking about hundreds, even broach the 1,000 mark on a daily basis. And what people drew to my attention, in fact, my brother was doing some mathematical modelling on the exponential growth of things. I think it was perhaps a little bit of a reference to the way that, for example, compound interest works on credit cards. They were drawing my attention to the rapid acceleration of the bars on this chart. I couldn't help, the skeptic in me couldn't help but think that, what are you saying? That because on this particular day there's another bar and it's a little bit bigger than the previous bar, and that's a little bit bigger than that, and is the next one going to be even bigger? Is it going to be a bigger leap, and we're going to leap all the way up to the moon? It seems to me that any virus is going to, any flu, and apparently there are another 3 of these viruses kicking around, is going to, during a limited period of time, during a seasonal winter period, it's going to accelerate very quickly, but then as quickly decelerate. And, it's kind of basic physics in a way. You can imagine an archer shooting an arrow into the air. It's going to accelerate very, very quickly, but then it's going to hit a point and just gravity's going to take hold and it's going to decelerate just as fast, and the spike's going to be pretty narrow. Certainly, the idea that compound interest might be at work is an entirely inappropriate analogy for my money. Compound interest, which Einstein called the 8th wonder of the world, which I had to study in some detail during the course of bringing
financial mis-selling claims against banks who'd stuck payment protection insurance on credit cards during the recession. Certainly, you know, it's a completely different animal. There you've got a debt that's growing, but on top of it, you've got this compound interest that's being added on a daily basis, and the only way is up. And the curve isn't like that. It is extreme, and that's the nature of compound interest. Well, the other thing about these charts is I'm not sure how much how much weight you can put on the data collection. And take, for example, I think it's France's chart during a particular period of time showed just a random massive spike out of nowhere. And when you looked into it, it's quite difficult to find any information online about this, but there is information out there. It appears that, you know, data for one day had loaded into it data that was only just being collected over the previous days, but the collection process hadn't completed, and so data from previous days or previous weeks was front-loaded into a particular day and created this spike. So it's all seemingly, and I might get a little bit woo-woo here, but I think certainly it's important to acknowledge that emotions are at play, and emotions are running riot in this climate, and it seems that as human beings we do have something of, I don't know, it's almost as if we have something of a fear trigger. Perhaps it goes down to guilt, perhaps it's something to do with original sin and feeling that there's an Armageddon around the corner and that we all deserve something for the sins that we've committed during our lives. But for whatever reason that it is, and maybe there's a sort of scientific fear and flight type factor at work, better to run for the hills at the sight of a minimum risk. You know, you can see this in the animal kingdom. Animals get spooked very easily and very unnecessarily just by the presence of a human being in the vicinity. So, but it does seem as if there's some fear trigger that's pressed, and suddenly, rather than sort of assess matters coolly and collective fashion, when we have our phones and we hear the latest news, and the press love to sensationalize a good story because that's what sells newspapers online and print. When we get that little bit of news, bang! I guess if you were a scientist, you could probably do a test. I'm sure that during the times of fear, chemicals suddenly run riot. Yeah. And I'm sure that scientists have studied this in humans and animals, and it almost seems as if when a little bit of news, when a little bit of sensationalist news is, and particularly scary bar charts are produced, the fear button gets pressed and we stop thinking rationally and we just simply start running around in all is lost fashion. And maybe there is some, primal biological underpinning there, and I'm sure there is, but one wonders just how useful that is in this day and age.
Ledningen tackar er för resan och önskar er välkommen tillbaka till Stena Line.
Szanowni Państwo, prom Stena Spirit dopłynął do portu w Karlskronie.
Koronawirus, myślicie wadne albo nie wadne? Serious? Albo nie?
Myślę, że koronawirus jest poważny. Trzeba to traktować jak najbardziej poważnie.
Bardzo poważnie?
Tak. Myślę, że tak.
Jak? Co ty myślisz? Jest...
No myślę, że jak są te restrykcje w państwie, w Polsce założone, no nie są... są bardzo dobrze, są, moim zdaniem. Że są. Że to jest jakieś ograniczenie rozprzestrzeniania się tej pandemii. Bo jakby ich nie było, to bylibyśmy, no można powiedzieć, drugą Francję, Włochy lub Hiszpanię.
Tak, bardzo... Ja rozumiem.
Uważam, że zareagowano w czas.
Ja podzielam zdanie kolegi.
Zgadza się.
Tak, zgadzam się.
I to zgadza się?
Ja też się zgadzam.
Maska jest dobra?
Jest jakoś odporna na...
Bardzo dobra.
Wszyscy w maskach.
Rozumiem. Dziękuję bardzo. Dziękuję. As a lawyer, I couldn't help but have the greatest admiration for the draftsman who did this sign. It's beautifully vague, leaving you confused and stupid all at once, without actually clarifying whether or not we're meant to wear a mask on the ferry and at the ferry port in Sweden or not.
Construction in Poland is that everybody seems to be working. It's the one area that's seems to be very busy.
Yeah.
And what construction work are you doing?
And we make the tiling and painting, something like.
Okay.
And in young shopping, something there.
And some shopping.
In young shopping.
Young shopping. Sorry. I'm going up to Vastavir. And can I just ask you quickly what your opinion is of the coronavirus? Is it bardzo ważne albo nie bardzo?
Nobody knows. Me too. I cannot tell you nothing.
It's a mystery.
Mystery, yes, of course.
Do you think the Polish government has taken good steps?
Yeah, I think it's good steps. Very good steps. Because in Poland it's not so many people with coronavirus.
No, that's true. I think the numbers are very low,
and
about 100.
About 300 people is died.
300, is it?
Little more maybe.
Little more. I think in the UK, where I'm from, about 16,000 have died, which is much more serious.
English government is working not so good.
I think the Polish government maybe has something to teach us.
Maybe.
Do you think that masks are essential, or do you think that's over the top too much, that everyone has to wear a mask?
I think it's good decision with mask.
You do?
Yeah.
Do you think the virus is carried in the air?
Yeah.
So there might be a danger even as we're speaking of the
virus?
virus?
Of course. It's normal. Yeah. The virus is better if we have distance 2 meters, minimum 2 meters.
Minimum 2 meters.
Yeah.
Is the virus serious, ważne, albo nie ważne?
I can say that in Poland is so very serious, I can say, because when I was home, I mean in Warsaw, we couldn't go out, you couldn't go to the shop.
Yeah.
It's like prison.
Like prison?
Like prison, exactly like prison. You can't do anything.
Yeah. And for a long period of time too. Do you know when it will end?
Yeah, a very long time, I can say.
Because the health minister said last week that people would have to wear masks until they found a vaccine for the coronavirus. What do you think of the government? Did you vote for them?
I am the kind person, the governor in Poland, I can say that they don't do anything. They are just, it's difficult to say, but...
Do feel free to speak in Polish, I can translate if it's easier for you.
All right. My English is not so well.
Mówisz po polsku?
Postaram się pomówić po polsku. I sytuacja jest tego typu, że porównując inne kraje w Europie, bo mam bardzo dużo znajomych, czy to w Niemczech, czy w Anglii, czy w Hiszpanii, czy w Szwecji.
Rozumiem. Albo w Polsce?
W Polsce
Ładne, albo...
sytuacja jest tego typu, że...
Ty są osoby, myśli. 300 people have died, I think.
Yeah, it's correct. It's around, I don't remember how many sick, but this is, today it could be over 9,000 or something.
Yeah.
And the problem is that they don't help you anymore. They do everything which one you are, they try to get you, we can say,
so the government doesn't help people, it's just wear a mask, lock yourself up, there's no supply for support for the hospitals, and there's no government support for small business, is there?
No, it's correct, and so many people lose them job, like my son, which one was work with a factory which was around 100 people, and they must close the factory because it's nothing happen.
So have they actually closed the factory?
Yep.
100 people, no jobs?
No, it is not just one example. It's hundreds, it's thousands, it's millions.
Jesus.
And
they don't know for how long. Is your son? Was
no,
he told how long?
This is so stupid because they don't tell you for how long you should be.
Yeah.
They just leave you out.
Is your son getting some money from the government, some
No,
support,
no.
unemployment benefit maybe?
Yes, of course you can go to. We have
Yeah.
special. It's called. I don't know how to say English.
We call it social security.
Exactly. We have the same. What you tell now. But it's just show.
Yeah.
The truth is, you can't get any help.
Yeah.
Sorry to say, but it's so fucking stupid. Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's good to speak from the heart. And in the UK, apparently, they are getting, small businesses are getting grants.
The problem is that you go to this kind office and say that you are here, you're Polish, and you pay tax and everything and work so many years. They've tried to find anything that you are not allowed get help for them.
Yeah.
Example myself. I work in Sweden, and I was come the beginning of the March or something, end of the the beginning of the March, and I can't coming back to Sweden, and I try to talk with people, many kind of office, try get help, any money for survive.
Yeah.
They just answer, sorry, but you work in Sweden, but I am still in Poland.
Where's your business registered? Is it a Polish business or a Swedish?
Polish.
So it's a Polish business?
Yeah.
And you pay taxes in Poland?
Yeah.
And they won't let you just because you work in Sweden, they won't help you?
Yeah, exactly. They say,
yeah.
I was talking with one woman and she say, sorry, but you must go to Sweden. I say, okay, it's correct, but let me go there and I fix this.
Yeah, yeah. So they wouldn't pay for your travel, they wouldn't pay you any support?
No.
So it's quite hard for a small business then, very hard. Could be very hard and you don't know when, and you've been paying taxes for how many years?
I am 44, but so many.
A lot.
Like everyone.
Yeah, like everyone, yeah. And what is your business?
No, I am builder. Just sneaker. I must tell you one thing. Sorry that I say wrong thing about Poland, but it's true. I live in Warsaw. This is our capital. So million people.
Yeah.
Everyone say about the virus, of course, today.
Yep.
If you go to the town, everywhere you see the police, the soldiers,
yep,
without gloves, without mask, without anything.
Yeah.
And they talk about shit, what you should do. You can imagine? And it was one accident when I was a couple of days ago with one gallery. We was one police guy and soldier. They talk about with a megaphone. You should have glass, you should have mask and everything. I said, why you don't have?
Why you don't have? And what did they say?
This is not your business. This was answer. This is not your fucking business, they say. Yeah. Sorry.
Do you think the virus is lethal or not lethal? Deadly or not deadly?
I think that this is really dangerous and people should start to think.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, I travel so much and see people and whatever.
But I guess we should be doing that anyway. We don't need a coronavirus to tell us to be careful.
No, it's correct.
I just wonder whether the steps that are taken are extreme. The problem is here, but the steps, the laws are here. What do you feel? Do you feel that it's too much by the government, or is it appropriate measures?
in Poland is like this, that they are, yes, it's correct, they are done very wrong thing to make people really sad, without job, without everything. Look, Sweden.
Yeah.
It's totally different.
Yeah.
Even that example, I don't remember, but last week was around 8,000 or 9,000 people sick in Poland, and in Sweden was over 11. But they still live, and they don't. I don't know what to say.
There's an expression: better to die on your feet than live on your knees. Have you heard that expression? The Belarusian president said on an ice hockey pitch, "It's better to die on your feet than to live on your knees."
It's a good question.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It's so interesting. And
what is life? Is it to live in fear, or is it better to take risks and live a free life?
I can't answer.
That's a good way to finish the interview. What's your name?
My name is Tom.
Tom, pleased to meet you, Tom. I'm Alex. Thank you very much for doing this. It's been very interesting what you said.
Tack så mycket.
I'm really grateful. Thank you.
you.